You're about to reach a higher plane.
This is an interesting one is, and probably the most dramatic read that you'll ever see, is what we call rock slam, which is that will literally slash. And it shows an equal purpose. Ooh.
Damn.
Have anyone got an equal purpose? Can we test it?
Yeah.
Sorry, as an electronic engineer, can you clarify the internals and what is driving the dial, please?
Yeah, it's basically, it puts a very small current through the body, and as the body electronics alter, it has an effect on the current going through it.
Right,
electrical field.
but surely that does support my personal theory of it's how hard you grip.
Now, definitely, how hard you grip makes a difference. How sweaty your hands are makes a difference. But there are things that happen on that meter that are absolutely not anything to do with your gripping and your sweat.
But can you clarify on those? Because a palm reader can tell how tense you are, whether you're shaking, whether you're sweating. So how is that any more effective than somebody?
Well, the difference between a palm reader and this is a palm reader will tell you, perhaps, you've got a problem in your relationship, or you're about to have another baby, or whatever it is they want to tell you by looking at your palm. They can tell you something about yourself, and some of them can be very accurate, it's true. What it doesn't do...
They're guessing, right? They're guessing, and based on what you say,
well, they
and
wouldn't
your
tell you
reactions
that.
that they feel...
Yeah, but the palmist wouldn't tell you that. They'd say they know.
Yeah.
Depending on what you say and your reactions that they pick up on, is where they choose to press. So how is that any different in auditing? If I say, oh, well, I was talking to my girlfriend the other day, and you see that I go tense, then clearly there's something there to be explored.
Yeah, if it was that gross a reaction, auditing was obviously started long before meters were invented. The meter was invented as an aid to auditing. It helps pick up much more subtle reactions that can be picked up any other way.
And the other thing I was going to say was, as a palmist or anything like that, they can then tell you, okay, it looks like you've got a problem with your mum, you're not going on very well with her, etc., etc. The difference between that and auditing is you come up with a solution. So when you go home and you're speaking to your mum, you feel different about your relationship with your mum, and you handle that. There's a change. Yeah?
Just for some of the people in the room that are trying to take out the ohm meter, I believe the US government and people use ohm meters as truth detectors. So your heart rate does go, and because of the way your blood flows, your resistance will drop when you're lying, when you're not, or will go up. I don't know which way it is.
The difference between a lie detector and this is I can say to you, I can put you on the meter, and I can say to you, did you murder the girl? You might get a fantastic read. You did not murder the girl, but you got a fantastic read. There's a reason for that. What we would explore in Scientology is not then accuse you of having murdered the girl, but find out what charge is it, what upset you have with this girl. Was there something you felt you could have done about it? Had you seen her just before she left? You were suspicious about another guy. There's all sorts of reasons why that might have read.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you're guilty of a murder.
They're both essentially stress, aren't they? I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They both measure physical changes in the body due to mental phenomena. Yeah.
Just to go back to, I think it was John's original question about what makes it a faith, what makes it a church, as opposed to, or was it someone else's question about a church or a school? Just if this is, regardless of the meter, some sort of psychotherapy.
Well, we believe in the spirit. A psychotherapist just doesn't necessarily deal with you as a spirit.
But I thought you could be a Scientologist without believing in a non-physical spirit. You could read the creed in that way.
Yes, you can. But the technique is looking at you as a spirit. So you can do the courses, and you don't have to believe in you as a spirit or a god. You don't have to have that belief at all. But once you start metered auditing, we are looking at you as a spiritual being.
And what is non-physical about that spiritual being?
What's
non-physical? As in, some people talk about physical and spiritual as if they're opposed to each other in a dialectic. But you've often talked about spiritual as it seems to be all as one. What is non-physical about your spiritual understanding?
Well, a Thetan has no matter, energy, space or time.
So how do you know it's there?
Because that's you.
How do you know you're there? What can I do?
Matt,
That'll
On
take
that point, it's like as was mentioned earlier, you can change the brain in someone, it changes the person, and you can keep changing the brain, it will keep changing the person, which everything that science has ever looked at with the brain implies that actually that's all there is. There's no spiritual side to it, there's no spirit, there's no supernatural side. Actually, you can observe the whole thing. So what's Scientology's answer to that? Everything that science looked at so far with the brain has said that it is just a normal, like any normal matter, it just has some electrical charge going through it.
The brain is. It's a muscle. Absolutely.
Well,
Shall I?
It's really not.
I'll just answer that one. I'll come back to you next. Be very patient there. So, a bit of history on how it turned into, how it became a religion. Yeah? Do any of you know anything about Dianetics? Have you heard of Dianetics?
Heard of.
It's a subject, it's about the mind, and the basic idea is that things that have happened to you in the past can have an effect on you in the future. It's not exactly a new idea, right? Like, for instance, you're in a car crash. It's kind of painful to you. Thereafter, you're very nervous about travelling in cars. You're a nervous passenger, you don't like to drive, or something like that. It's pretty common. It all started out with L. Ron Hubbard looking at this phenomena and finding a way of alleviating the past painful experiences so they no longer had an effect on you now. So that if you'd had a car crash in the past and it was giving you problems, you'd apply some Dianetics to it, and then the problems would go away, and you'd no longer have a problem driving around and stuff like that. And the basic proof of it, if you like, was just in its workability. If you applied this procedure and you went back and you looked at this past time that contained some sort of pain or some sort of upset, and it handled your condition now, then that seemed to be a workable sort of procedure, yeah? So as time went on and more people started doing it, this was back in the early 1950s in the States, and it took off like wildfire back then, and a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon, a lot of people started doing it, and he started getting reports of, see, part of the procedure is, okay, has anything like this happened before? Okay, and you run over that, and if that's not handling it, well, is there something earlier than that? And you go over that, and is there something earlier than that? And you get down to the bottom of it, and the person gets a lot better. And he starts getting these reports of people going to an early situation where they were knocked off their horse on the battlefield and stabbed through the heart with a broadsword. And people are going, well, what's going on here, you know? And that was a bit of it was a bit of a shock, I think, to him, as well as everybody else who was involved in it. And there was a lot of desire at that time amongst a lot of people to just, quell that. We're not going to, no, that's nonsense. We're not going to explore that. But he didn't. He looked at it, and what he noticed was, if you handle those incidents, the person gets better. If you don't handle those incidents, the person doesn't. Right? And then what it's looking like is you can go earlier and earlier down a chain of these incidents and end up what appear to be previous existences. And when you handle those, the person improves, and if you don't, the person doesn't. So following on the workability side of things, this is how it started to become evident that you're dealing with more than just the physical body, because you're picking up things from earlier on. A lot of research was done on it, to the point where these earlier incidents, details were taken from them and verified against actual records and things like that. And a lot of research went into proving whether or not these incidents were actually valid incidents, and they were. So that's how it transferred from a technology to try and help people overcome some of the problems that they had into a religious thing, because you then start going, well, it's not just a one life body we're talking about, there's something more than that. if you're picking up memories from previous